y'all. It's
Motha Knows.
Motha Knows, and we back.
Hey.
We back, y'all. So what we doing today? What's the deep sigh?
No, I think today's gonna be a good combo.
Yeah.
Like a good releasing,
hopefully insightful,
informative,
right?
Just all of that, So I'm
all
excited.
of the
I'm
above.
excited about it. Yeah.
So no deep sighs.
I mean, just
we're jumping in.
It's a
exhale,
pulling everybody in. Yeah.
Mindful.
Exactly.
Moment. Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Well, today, guys, we are going to be talking about grief and navigating, I think, grief. Giving you guys some tips to help you through the process, I think, as well. But really just kind of talking about our experience with it and how we've navigated through.
Yeah. That's where I was going to go. So I think how we learn from one another is sharing personal stories and, just being vulnerable enough to let people know what we've been through, what grief looked like for us. And hopefully, like in the comments, I'm sure people can relate.
Yes.
With
that's the big thing.
Personal journey.
That's the big thing. Vulnerability. I think we're all sometimes a little nervous about it, but we all go through these things, the same things.
Yeah.
And when we hold on to our stories, it hinders, I think, people from really learning what other people have gone through, so that number one, they can learn from it, but also two, they can feel comfortable about talking about it themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's what I think that's the stagnation of something like this. Emotions like this. It's because people hold it so close to the chest.
Yep.
And I think we forget sometimes about the human experience and that every single person,
no one's exempt,
is going to go through this. Every single person on this earth.
Yep.
And so when we're able to just talk about it and share it, that is what doesn't make it the boogie monster that it becomes sometimes in our minds, and even in maybe literature or podcasts or whatever have you. Sometimes it becomes this big elephant or this big scary thing, when really the more we share, the more we can process it and humanize it, and even look at it and objectively and say, okay, this is while it's not comfortable, it's not fun for anyone. It doesn't have to be something that holds me back.
Right.
So, yeah.
So we're gonna walk through it together.
Yeah. So, grief.
Yes.
Again, something that we have all experienced in life. We're going to experience it multiple times in life. And I think that just the research that I've done with it in my traditional education, going through psychology and that being my background, but then just going through life too, I think I'm able to look at it now as something that is transformative, disruptive, yes, but it's one of those emotions that if you lean into it, it prompts growth, right? They say, the pressure makes diamonds. Emotions like grief and other tough emotions, they help to break through those phases of our life and of our individual being that we probably need in some essence, and we don't always understand that we need it, but it's there to move us in a direction. And I was listening to a TEDx talk today where it said that you don't move away from grief, you move forward with it. And that's how I look at it now. It's how do I move forward, knowing that I've experienced this,
and knowing that everyone will experience
it, right, and that it's shaping me in a new fashion, basically. So
yeah, I think about it kind of in the same way. It helps, I think, to think of it as gaining more understanding and insight about yourself and about life in general. For me, when you think about the word grief, I think a lot of times people have a tendency to just go straight to the thought process of sadness and pain. But I was looking at someone, Andrew Huberman, who is a neuroscientist, and he kind of puts the science behind what grief looks like, because they study the brain when people are going through cycles of grief. And it's really interesting to think about the different areas of your brain that are activated during the state of going through grief. And he really talks about it in a motivational sense, in that we are motivated during the time of grief to seek something that is essentially out of our grasp, in the way that we have understood it in the past.
a time,
in a time and a space
yeah,
and an emotional closeness that we have
it breaks that
experienced it
continuum.
in the past.
Yeah.
In the past, but he helps you shift your mindset around keep holding on to. So there are three dimensions, like I mentioned: the emotional state, the closeness, in space and time.
Mm-hmm.
And so he helps you to grapple with the idea that you can remain connected to the emotional state, but have to shift and remap your brain around the idea of space and time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Um, so a psychological theory is continuing bond, right?
Mm-hmm.
The continuous bond. I'll say continuous bond, but that's it's they call it a continuing bond. Um, but addressing the space and time dynamic that seems fractured.
Right.
Once somebody that is, especially like a close loved one, passes on, it alters your immediate environment, your immediate definition of who you are and and who you are in relation to others.
Right.
And so in that continuing bond, it's how do I now build a new relationship with this, I'll say person, but with this soul, with this energy, whatever have you,
Mm-hmm.
that's not here, but I know is still around me,
Right.
you know?
Yep.
And when our father passed, um, I think that was one of the breakthrough moments for me. It was no, he's not physically here,
Mm-hmm.
but how do I now build a relationship with him? Because I know definitely that he's still around us. I know that I don't feel him for, I'm not feeling him for no
For no
reason.
reason. Right.
And so I know that in some way it makes sense, whether it's if it's not physically, spiritually, energetically, the neuroscience of it, like it makes sense that I
Yeah.
still feel his presence. And so now how do we now interact and relate to one another just in a different way?
And it's quite frankly healthy to do that because
Yeah.
you have such a strong emotional closeness to certain individuals that it doesn't make sense to just completely relinquish it because they're not here in the
Right.
physical.
Right.
You have to figure out, and it's healthy to navigate in a way that you're figuring out how to best cope with and understand what it means to now have relation with someone who's not physically present.
Yeah. And to relinquish it would be devastating
It is.
to
It
the even even your like your DNA and genetic makeup.
right.
To relinquish your attachment your from a person that number one is you're here because of them,
Yeah.
right? Their fiber is in your fiber.
Right.
And then to say I'm just going to completely relinquish that and walk away from it. Now what you've done is severed
It's
a huge
traumatizing.
major part of
Right.
yourself.
Right.
And so to your point, it is healthy to continue that because you're supposed to.
Right. So
Like you're
there's
supposed to continue that attachment in a healthy way.
right. So the relinquishing abruptness, that's traumatizing. Also, too, you don't want to be holding on to the idea that so you're so fixated on holding on that you're almost in a state of denial where
Right.
it's like, okay, the person's still here because they have transformed into something different for your life.
Yeah.
But like to your point, when you think about the science of it, you have memories
Yep.
ingrained in yourself. It's imprinted in
In
you.
your body.
So
Yeah.
to just abruptly relinquish all of that would be
Extremely
devastating.
traumatic. Like
Yeah.
now we always go through a process in life where you start to question who am I, but to do it in that way,
Yeah.
to remove an essence of yourself,
Yeah.
like
Correct. It would be
you have to completely rewrite your story.
right.
And then so right
And
without
everything
any
you've
everything
understood to
right.
that up until that point.
And then who's going to help you do that? And if you do it on your own, like that would just be a spiral that I wouldn't want anyone to go through because
But
that's a
I mean,
spiral that would be very hard to get out of.
sadly, quite frankly, I do think some people do,
Some people do, yeah,
like
because they
some,
think it's healthy to just
right, to just, all right, they're
relinquish it all. But
gone,
that's the denial part of
move
it, right?
on. Yeah.
And when you talk about the
I
stages of
hate
grief,
hearing that. Sorry.
what?
When people say just move on.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I would. Who says that?
People
Who?
have said
I
that,
know people have said it, but it's like,
especially when you
who
see
raised you?
people. So there are cycles of grief that are called complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So some people have heightened grief that
Mm-hmm.
they get into states of depression and
Mm-hmm.
long term,
Yep.
you know and I do think that they do hear those sentiments,
Mm.
and it's just not helpful.
Or if they don't hear it in that instance, they heard it programming growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It was always, or you saw it.
You
Like
saw it.
we're not going to talk about it. We're going to move on.
Right.
It is what it is. get over it. Like
Right.
they saw that, so it's just an automatic thing that they naturally lean into
Right.
without even thinking about it. But going into the stages of grief, I know you touched on depression, we touched on denial, just going through those 5 stages.
Yep.
I think is a good reference point for the viewers to understand and know. But I definitely don't think, with the complexity of being a human being, that it addresses all right the
Right.
complete nature of a human. But the 5 stages of grief being anger, denial, depression, acceptance, and I'm forgetting the last one.
Hmm. If we don't think of it now, we'll,
Yeah, anger. Okay, so anger, depression, denial, acceptance.
because it's escaping me as well.
Yeah,
Bargaining.
bargaining. Thank you, and that's the one I knew was going to be hard for me to remember,
To remember, yeah.
because I was like bargaining, like.
Yeah.
And again, just now, us going through it.
If only I had done this.
So that's the regret. Okay, so I akin that to regret.
Okay.
Um, but
Or
personally,
if I
going
do
through
this,
our,
then,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, going through our loss with daddy,
Yeah.
right?
So
When
you Oh,
I was
okay.
I was just gonna say, when I read those 5 stages of grief,
Mhm.
I completely knew, just looking at those words, that it wasn't
You didn't
it wasn't
identify with all of them.
encompassing everything that I've gone through.
Right. And I think that that's the learnings now, and the teaching in that space is that, although, hats off to, and
Yep.
the name escapes me, but she's a pioneer in the grief world.
And there has to be a start, right? There has to
Right.
be a
But
beginning.
she came up with the 5 stages of grief. But
Hmm.
what we now know and understand, through research is that, and through research of people who are going through grief, they research brain and, the different areas of the brain that are activated. We now know that some people don't experience all of the stages of grief, and it might not be in the
In
same
order.
sequence
Yeah.
that it's laid out,
Yeah.
as had been previously understood.
And I'm gonna say probably almost never.
Right. Right.
Right, because we're all different.
Right.
Right. So again, you have the conditioning that's there already.
Yeah.
You have those societal cues. You have even your life circumstances. When our father passed, I had just had my first daughter. She
Yeah.
was 3 months old. And so I couldn't even lean into as sad as I wanted to feel and be,
Mhm.
because I had to be strong enough. I was still nursing,
Yeah.
still waking up in the middle of the night with her. Like, I
Yeah.
had to really focus on her at the time. Yes, feel daddy's absence, but I couldn't immediately jump into, okay, he's not here, and what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, I had to focus on this little being. So I think life circumstances also will be that prompt to say, where do I even begin this journey? And I think for me, it was probably dissociation, because I couldn't give it my full attention. Because
Yeah.
when I dive into emotions, like, I want to dive
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So if I couldn't, then I was like, I'll handle it, like, at another
Another
time.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Amber has, kind of jumped into what we experienced as one of our most poignant, uh, instances of grief. But I think it would be a disservice if we don't talk about it in totality
Yeah.
and give them some context.
Yeah.
Um, so my dad, our dad, he passed away in 2013.
Yep.
And it was
Yep.
somewhat sudden. He had an aneurysm, and I remember the day I got a call from, I believe, Amber. You called me, and then also my aunt called and, just let us know that he had had an aneurysm that evening, or the night before, and I don't know the amount of time that he was unattended, but
It was
it was
for,
some
I
some
want to
some
say,
time
at
because
least an hour.
he went upstairs, complaining of a headache, and went to
Hmm.
lay down, and was found, need
Unresponsive
unresponsive and
for
needing
the most
help,
part.
right?
Yeah.
And so he had an aneurysm, and it was quite sudden. They brought him to the hospital. They put him on life support, because he not only had an aneurysm, but he dealt with, high blood pressure. And
Yeah.
for those who don't know, when you deal with that, they can't immediately, give you medical attention that you would need, surgery, because of your high blood pressure. They
Yeah.
have to get that down first in order to do anything.
Hmm.
And by the time I think they were able to do anything, he was, I believe, brain dead.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely shocking.
It was shocking, yeah.
Um,
Even talking about it now
because
kind of brings up
it
some
does bring
emotions.
it up, because I remember, like, talking to him a few days before that.
Mm.
Like, just sounding like himself, like being
Yeah.
fully healthy and vibrant. You know, daddy was upbeat, even when he
Yeah.
wasn't internally feeling it. Like
Yeah.
when you talk to him, he was
Hey.
upbeat,
Yeah.
and
Always kind
yeah,
of.
just that person to put you in a good mood.
Right.
Um, so getting the call from our aunt and being like, wait, what?
Hmm.
You know, but it was very, remember, it was stop and go. Like,
Yeah.
okay, wait, it's horrible. Wait, he might be
He's
getting
not being.
better.
Yeah.
Wait, it's
We were
bad
getting a
again.
lot of
Like,
mixed messages, but
so
I think, you know, to not to say anything in a negative light. Anytime I think you're dealing with something like that, you don't know what to think, and you're going play by play from the doctor. So I think the people who were there were dealing with a lot of information that was coming at them, and it was like a lot of touch and go
yeah, so that's what I was
information.
gonna say. Yeah,
So
it
it
was
was
just touch
relayed
and
to
go.
us,
It was relayed through family members.
Right.
And I think that's when it started,
Mm-hmm.
because now you're thrown into a flux of, first of all, we live long distance from daddy. He's in
Right.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
I'm in Nebraska. You're in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're leaning on information, and everyone's doing their best to understand the
What's
situation.
going on? Right.
They're doing their best to relay, this is what's going on. Your dad is at this stage. And so one, not knowing what to do.
Right.
And then finally getting the news that he's passed.
Yeah.
And you're like, but wait, like, we thought he was at least going to be here.
Get
Like, I thought I
right
had enough time to get
to
to
get there.
Connecticut
Yeah.
to
To
see
see
him,
him.
to say some words.
Right.
Like,
So
even
that
if
he could
he
hear us,
didn't
our voice.
make it, like,
Right.
to at least be able to have that last
Yeah.
conversation.
Yep.
Very triggering.
It is.
Even talking about it now, just
It's
very
like,
triggering. It's
whew.
like, yeah,
And
not,
we've done the work, So
yeah,
I think that is speaks to grief itself too.
yep.
It's like
It
it's an
doesn't
ebb
go
and flow. It
away.
doesn't go away. Like
Yeah.
it's something that, like you said, you're working through it. You're moving forward
And you
with
move
it.
forward with it,
Right,
right?
with it.
It's an attachment, like, it's
Yeah.
attached to you, and that doesn't mean that it slows you down or it hinders you or it has to hurt every day.
Right. But
But when you speak about it,
right.
right, it's like I'm
There are
back in that
moments.
moment.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I can
Because I'm
physically
thinking,
feel
right.
that moment of, my dad's not here
Yeah.
anymore.
Because I'm thinking about, my sister talks about how she had just had her daughter, newly married with a child. I was in my last year in law school. I was actually preparing for finals,
Yeah.
so it was a lot,
Mm-hmm.
It was like navigating that, making sure that I was like, in my right mind space to take my exams, but also like coordinating, trying to get up to Connecticut as
Mm-hmm.
fast as I could. My mom and I ended up actually driving up to Connecticut through the night. Thankful. I'm so thankful that I had her like in that
Mm-hmm.
space. I had a roommate in law
Yep.
school who, the night that I was told about his passing, I went to my mom's, and of course she was like, I'm going too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so she spent the night with me. But it was like, it was a really tough and trying time,
Mm-hmm.
because I also think about too, like how close we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, all the stuff that you were dealing with being a new mom.
Mm-hmm.
It also felt for me like I was kind of navigating it alone, because you had to, be in it so
Mm-hmm.
much
So
with
much with Ari, yeah.
Ari.
Mm-hmm.
When we got up to Connecticut, I ended up spending the night at my dad's house.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, you had to be with Ari,
Right.
and I understand it
Mm-hmm.
completely. It doesn't erase how I felt,
Mm-hmm.
how it felt,
Mm-hmm.
So it
Mm-hmm.
was like, it was a lot,
Mm-hmm.
Um, but thinking back to, like, even learning about his passing, I remember like I was in the school library preparing for a presentation with my partner, and I told him what was happening. I got the call, and he was like, just go.
Mm-hmm.
You go. I'm going to finish the project. I will present it. Like, it even chokes me up now thinking about how much um, the beauty of human
Yeah.
beings
Mm-hmm.
that help you through
Yep.
those moments.
Yep.
Like, my roommate and
Yep.
you, and,
Yep.
everybody just helped us
Mm-hmm.
through it,
Yeah. Because you don't. So, okay, I know we said that we want to, like, I know you. I love you.
I'm good.
Um,
I mean, look,
I
y'all,
know.
like thinking about these things, like the details of it,
Yeah.
you don't think about every day.
And
So,
especially sharing it with, like, if
right.
we were talking about it, I think it'd be a
It'd
little
be
bit lighter.
different,
But
but
pulling
sharing it with
other
the
people
world,
in,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I'll tell y'all this, like, y'all might see a tear or two,
Yeah.
but I have worked very hard
Yeah.
through it. You know,
Yeah.
it took a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Unexpectedly
A lot of
so.
time,
You know,
patience.
right? With
Um,
self,
yep.
patience with self, and
Cycles.
kindness with self.
Yep. I know that we said that we wanted to do parts to this, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's important because the angle that you brought up, right? So there's the angle of the person going through
Mm-hmm.
that grievous moment, but then there's the people that are supporting you, and how do
Yeah.
they support? And I don't know why this is the part that's kind of choking me up, but I think that one of the best things you can do for a person is just be there.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm. Yeah. No, for real. Like even in the, I think sometimes people have a tendency to want to like do something to fix it, and with death you can't
You
fix
can't
it.
fix it. It's
You can't,
final.
like, yeah, and it's in not to say it's final in a sense.
What I mean is physically.
Physically, yeah,
Physically, it's
physically it's
final. Like
final, but you have
I
those people in your life who are like wanting to just show up and like
and
really just transform it for you,
yeah,
and it's
and it's
something you can't do.
and and it's important to just to be able to sit in it.
Just sit in it, yeah.
Because even though I'm like being choked up about it, excuse me, just people's human presence,
Ooh,
um, it's so powerful to just
yeah.
feel their love and support,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't have to say too much. You don't have to
Right.
do anything, but just
Just,
knowing that they're there,
yeah.
and
Yep.
I can pull your strength and your essence from you in that
Yeah.
time that I need it.
And honestly, I think that's something that, so I noted that you were with Ari, you know, but you're the only one in this world who
Yeah.
really understands and gets the level and the gravity of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, of losing daddy.
Yeah.
So we pull, you know, we pulled strength from each other.
Yeah.
And that was like a beautiful thing too. Like I
Yeah.
didn't even know how close I could be beyond how close we were.
Right.
But walking through that with you
Mm-hmm.
got
Oh
us
yeah,
closer.
it
You know what I
did.
mean?
Because it was a couple of moments where we looked at each other. We were like, I ain't got
I
it.
don't got it.
I
Like
ain't.
I ain't
They talk
got
like they're
it.
talking to me. Like
It's
they
just
want
a
me to do this and
blur.
that. Like
Yeah.
we would look at each other and be like, we're gone.
Yeah.
Like let's just go.
Yeah. Like even thinking about Daddy's memorial
That's what
service.
That's what
And this is the beauty
I know.
too.
People
This is
probably
the
talk
beauty
about
too
us
of
to this
grief.
day about that.
Right. But this is the beauty of grief too. You can kind of laugh through the moments,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Because, you know, for my sister and I, you know, we're up in Connecticut. That's where my dad lived. Repping, shots out to UConn and all the goodness
Yay.
that there is in Connecticut.
CT.
Yes.
Let's get it. Beef
Knacky.
patty.
Okay. Anyway, but yeah, we're at the memorial service, and there were a few moments that I could name, but I'll talk about like I think our family has a tendency in grief
Want to
to lean
smile
on humor
and
and
yeah, and laugh.
the good
Want to
times and
laugh and
laughter,
so yeah.
and not that there's anything wrong with that, but you don't know how everyone else navigates,
Mm-hmm.
right? But our family has a tendency to do that,
And I
and
will say it's part of a tradition, right?
yeah,
Like
it is,
to do that too, like to have the
yeah,
repast and want to kind
right,
of celebrate the
celebrate
person.
the person. But me and Amber was like, I don't have
We're not
it, I'm not
coming.
doing it, no.
Don't have it in
And
me.
we got a couple calls that were like, you know, it would be nice if you guys could show up. Not
No.
doing it. And no. And
Not coming.
for our own sanity, for our own health, that's just what we needed at the
That's what we
time.
needed. And
And we knew that
we
about each
understood
other.
that about each
Yeah.
other. Like we don't have it.
Right. And say what you're gonna say. Talk how you're gonna talk,
We
but
standing on it.
we're standing
We're
on
not
this.
gonna be
I'm standing
there.
on business.
Right. Standing on it. Like
So yeah.
um
Why are we the same person? So yeah.
and I'm losing my thought, but I think like again, being able to like have you in that moment and you understand, like, no, I get it. Like we're
Yeah, we're
not
not
going.
going. And that's that.
It is what it is.
And then like we got a couple calls that we answered, and then we got some that we didn't.
That we didn't, right?
That we were like, okay,
but
we said what we had to say.
even though people, you could kind of tell they didn't get it, and I'll say older generation didn't understand
Yeah.
it. I think they did respect it. They
They
begrudgingly
did.
respected
They
it.
did,
I
yeah.
could tell they didn't understand it, but they didn't push.
Yeah. And
It was like, okay.
I respect that, because everybody, like I said, I think in the context of how everybody grew up, you know, like in thinking about how when grandma passed and seeing
Ooh.
daddy and, you know, his
I had never
siblings
seen him break down like that.
navigate her passing. So that was our first major loss,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I think we were, so I'll say this. My grandmother and I had a very special bond. I would call her every morning, and we would talk. And I was 5 at the time when she passed, but I hold on to memories of hearing her voice in the morning because we would always talk to each other before I went to school. But I say all that to say, even though I have those memories and I hold on dear, and she was literally like one of the most important women figures in my life. I was 5, so I couldn't truly
Right.
grasp what it meant
What it meant.
to lose someone.
Yeah, that she's not coming back,
Right.
that I won't hear her
Right.
voice.
Right.
Where did she
And when I
go?
did grasp it, I was old enough that number one, the closeness and proximity of it was not as poignant. It wasn't as
Mhm.
deep,
Mhm.
So
And you were younger.
I was
Like
young. I was 5.
young kids tend
So
to kind of bounce back and keep it pushing
right.
and keep it moving.
But I've had moments, even when I was like maybe I'll say like 8 and 10, and then even into like middle school and high school, I've had moments where I cried and thought about her and was like, man, like if only she could see me,
Mhm.
those thoughts.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, thinking about that, seeing how they navigated it, I can understand why the expectation was that we would
We
like
would go
go
and
and celebrate and pay our respects and say thank you to those who were there,
and
but
we said no.
I didn't have it.
But you know what? And here's the thing too. We didn't get those. I think had I gotten that final moment with Daddy to be able to
Right.
say my
Hmm.
goodbyes and kind of be at more at peace with
Yeah,
it,
that day
I
was our
could
final
have
moment.
made it that day. But that
Right.
day, I was like, I'm in shock.
Yeah, I
Like
was.
I am. I don't even. My mind is like I can't even like
Right.
process what's going on at this moment. So no, I can't be there to
Yeah.
talk to anybody and smile and hear how much I look like him or
Hmm.
hear how much like he was a great man. Like
Because
I
my
don't
sister
have
looks
it.
exactly like our dad,
Yeah,
like exactly.
like I just didn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally moving in the haze. Like
Yeah, it was a
I
haze.
remember. So I remember at my dad's memorial service, I spoke.
You
I
did.
remember
I was
some
proud
of
of you
it, but I
too.
don't remember all
You
of
did a
it.
great job.
What I do remember though is the directive not to cry.
Mm.
You know, like don't cry, and that was hard. That was really hard.
Because how do you tell somebody not to naturally show their emotion about their dad? You know
Yeah.
what? You know. And I'm glad I didn't hear it because I
Yeah.
probably would have snapped. Like it's because I don't play about you. Like
Yeah.
like I probably would have snapped. So I'm glad I didn't hear it, but I hate that you had to hear that. Like she, this is his daughter.
Yeah.
If anyone deserves to cry, she deserves to cry. Like
Yeah. It
she's,
was tough.
you know.
Yeah.
So how do you tell somebody that? So I'm sorry you had to deal with
Yeah.
that.
It was tough, but I wanted to make sure I honored him.
And you did. Like what I will say is I was like I can't go up there and speak. I can't do it
Yeah.
because again I had given so much energy to
Yeah.
Ari, like getting
Mhm.
her ready and nurse. Like
I know it was a
I
lot.
didn't
Like
have it.
you were a new mom. Like this is your first
Yeah,
child. You're
and
nursing.
then you think about cause thank God that he had been able to meet her.
Yeah.
But then you have that realization, like shoot, like
She's gonna grow up without him. Yeah.
and then we have more, and
Mhm.
you have that
And
realization.
woo, our kids would have loved him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is such a like a. And we talked about this too. You have a tendency in someone's death to
Make them a
martyr
martyr,
them a bit and
romanticize it.
romanticize
Mm-hmm.
who they were. And our dad, he's a human being, so
Mm-hmm.
he had flaws. He
Mm-hmm.
showed up sometimes in not the best way for
Mm-hmm.
us. There were definitely ways in which I wish and I hoped that he could show up better for us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in the ways that he did, I know that our kids would have just loved him so much, and he would have loved them, like literally would have been all
Yep.
about them.
Yep. And the ways that he did for us and how we're able to lean into our life moments
Hmm.
with the rearing that he did give us.
Yeah.
Even though again, he was a human.
Right.
So there were ways that he, could
Yeah.
have been better
And we're gonna talk about those ways.
in supporting us,
Not in
but
this episode, but we're gonna talk about them.
right, right.
Cause daddy,
Childhood trauma.
right? Cause daddy, you could have done better.
But just the word, right?
Yeah.
Affirmations,
Hmm.
love.
Right.
Daddy's passing, TD Jakes talks about this and how if you really look at grief, it's one of those emotions that um, you learn from the most.
Ooh, yeah.
And again, it's usually those complicated emotions
Mm-hmm.
that push you and cause breakthroughs that are the most prominent in your life.
And you recognize too, I need to work. Like there's some work I need to do around this.
Growing
For
up,
most, hope you know.
no, growing up, what I leaned into with my father was the things that I felt
Mm.
he was lacking in.
Yeah, we both did, but that's not. I mean, I think.
And when he, like, at his funeral,
Mm-hmm.
leaving the funeral,
Child,
right?
child.
So casket closes.
Yeah.
The
Mm.
I mean, that's another moment that we could talk about. But the
We
casket
we need to
closes.
we need to
We
break
get to
that
break.
down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's carried into the hearse.
Mm-hmm.
Leaving the funeral, there's a line of people
Around the building.
wrapped around the building. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I had it all wrong.
It's
Are
an
you
epiphany
serious?
moment.
Are you
Yeah,
serious?
yeah.
Like
Like
everything that I was
the lives
focused
he
on,
touched.
everything that I was. Let me put it this way: everything that I picked up on
Mm-hmm.
growing up,
Right. That's a good way to put
right?
it.
Um,
Didn't
it
matter
didn't matter. Like,
because to the
look
people
at the
around, like
impact
around
that
him,
this
he
man that
impacted.
would even himself say,
He didn't see it.
I probably wasn't that great.
Mm-hmm.
I probably didn't do as much as I needed to do. When you
Mm-hmm.
looked at that line wrapped around the building, I was like, okay, it's 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 the love
It's bigger.
that he really made people feel when he was in their
Mm-hmm.
presence. It's bigger than the material, the societal expectations that people have of you. Yeah, is it important? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to diminish that. But at the end of the day, what I wish I had more time leading into was the love that I always felt from Daddy when I talked to him, when I was around him,
When you were in his presence.
that he instilled in me.
Yeah.
Like that, it was like it like literally like
It hit you
took
then.
the wind out of me when I saw that line, and I was like,
Yeah.
God, I get it.
It was that, and it was knowing that. So he in his service was in a town that he ended up living in and residing in, a town that he loved. You know, he had a church family there, his beautiful wife, and their family as well, our family. But he grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, and learning that there were so many people who were like, "Oh, wow, I didn't even know." Like, that is what I didn't know about his service. I didn't know it was in New Britain. You know, there were so many people that
So
would have
many
still
people.
like that didn't end up being there, but it was packed, y'all. Like it was like,
Church was packed, line around the
yeah,
building.
I want to say at least, yeah, I don't want to, I hesitate to put
I
a number,
can,
but
yeah,
it
I
was in the
can,
hundreds. Like it was a
I
lot of
can.
people there just to pay respects to my dad. Even so much as his college coach D Rowe came and
I don't even remember
paid
that
his
child.
respects. Yeah, I remember him coming through and
I was in such a haze.
yeah. So, or sorry, not his college coach. I believe his assistant coach
Okay.
came. But yeah, it was nice to see all those people who were there, all those people that he impacted,
Mm-hmm.
and then people just coming up to us and saying. One thing I hold on to is that I never will question how proud he was of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
people
Because
coming up,
everybody would come up to us and
yeah.
he just talked about y'all so
Hmm.
much and he was so proud and yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So y'all see, I mean, it really is it's a like a going
Especially with
through
the
it.
parent, sibling,
Yeah,
child,
it's
like
just so like the
the
relationship that
closeness
you
of that
have is
relationship. Yeah.
so tight,
Mm-hmm.
and even like I said, even in the moments of realizing that they were human too, like it's just like a an emotional impact and bond that they have on your life that it's not healthy to think that you can just sever it,
Separate.
you know.
Yeah. Um, okay, so you said you wanted to go back. I don't know if you now.
Yeah. No, we can go back because I definitely I always think about this moment.
That when they
So
closed the casket, yeah.
my sister and I, we it's draining. It's at a draining time, But that day in itself, we were in the church, right?
Yep.
We'd gone through the service. I think we both went up.
Mm-hmm.
One thing
Yeah.
I'll say too before I get into that is I always thought as a younger person, like I didn't want to go up to my grandmother. She had an open casket
Mm-hmm.
as well. I didn't want to go. I was 5. And then when other people would pass that weren't as close, I was like I'm good. Like I can go up, but I'm not gonna touch them or anything. with my dad, there was such a familiarity and closeness that it didn't even feel like I was. So I held his hand, I kissed his hand, and it didn't feel like this is another, this is a dead body. It felt like that's my dad. Like I want to
because
I want to touch, I want to feel him. I want to like I still have the picture in my mind. He looked, as close as you can look to self, after your your body is gone. But he looked really good, and I just was like, I just felt so close to him in that moment. So that's an aside, but for anyone who struggles with that, like I did growing up, I think that it may be different depending on your relationship with the person. It may be. I'm not saying always, but for me, it was different. Like I literally would never have touched anybody.
I touched grandma, like, because I think I was mimicking like what everybody else was doing. I was 7, so I think I saw somebody give her a kiss, right? And, we had the line. I don't even remember who it was. They bent down, gave her a kiss. So I was like, okay. I was a little scared to do it, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it.
I remember you telling me,
girl.
Yeah, not Ariel. No, ma'am.
Grandma, I love you. You're a beautiful woman.
Yes,
when
Eloise.
I kissed you and the body was cold, like
you
I
were
kind of jumped back and I was like,
what is this?
Why'd y'all tell me she was gonna be cold? Like, so, but what that showed me was like, oh, like that taught me, like, when someone passes, they are out of here. Like,
from the body.
They're not here.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I have so many kind of like deep feelings about passing and how you process it. Even though I'm crying here, like, me and Daddy be rocking.
Yeah, like, to be absent from the body is to be present with
exactly, and present with us.
And present with us. Right. And that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah.
Like present in ways that they couldn't be physically, which is beautiful too, because I know that Daddy wanted.
Yeah, that's true.
I know that Daddy for most human beings, right? Sometimes we want stuff. Like I think he wanted to show up for us in ways that he couldn't, in ways that he didn't. Sometimes he chose not to. Let's be real. Let's be honest. But I think now that he has transitioned, he's able to show up for us in ways that we don't even like recognize, but like he's pushing us forward in ways.
Yep, in ways that we need.
Right. And that's how I, in moving through your grief, some people lean on God. Definitely was that was me in, a few years later. Like I did go through an anger phase.
Yeah, and
I went through a questioning God phase. I went through this is all I've leaned on my whole life with God. And now I'm like, are you there, God? It's me, Margaret,
What's up? Because
how could you? What is this?
Not at this time.
What the heck? Like literally,
we had at least another 20 guys.
I'm sitting for my exams. I am a month before graduating law school. This is all this man has talked about. I still have messages
to
this day.
To pray for me, to pray with me.
I have messages to this day of him so excited about me becoming a lawyer, and he didn't. He saw it, but he didn't see it in the way that I thought he would. So it's like, bruh, God, like what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we both had the same feeling, right? Like when that casket closed, like, child, I remember going up to you and be like, and being like, when that casket closed, I literally wanted to lose my mind. Like I literally wanted to just fall to the floor, scream, shout, roll over.
But that's the casket closing.
Scream at God.
Yeah, that's the casket closing.
No, I'm talking not closing. When they drove, away.
To paint the picture, my sister and I, the church has, you walk out into like the lobby area, and there's these massive windows, right in front of us, and there's people kind of waiting, I think, to go to the repast, because we didn't go to the gravesite until the next day, I think. But there's people waiting to go to the repast in the lobby. And my sister and I, we walk up to those windows because we see the hearse with our dad in it.
And seeing it drive away.
That final moment of like, okay, this is really real.
Yeah, it's really real. Like,
it was a lot.
It's done.
Like I literally wanted to scream, run after that.
No, I wanted to like literally.
Like I saw my body doing it.
Movie scene, running behind the car, down the street.
I saw myself doing that, and then I saw myself
tearing my clothes, like everything.
Right. I heard myself being like, Ariel, check yourself, because you can't do all that. But I wanted to. No, like seriously. I literally wanted to run after that car and be like, no, you cannot take him.
Yep.
That's how it felt,
Yeah. I mean, again, I would in preparing and talking about this topic, talking
Mm-hmm.
about grief, of course, you do your research and you just kind of listen to those wise people that have
Mm-hmm.
come before you
Some
and studied it
understanding
longer.
about it.
And so listening to Sarah Jakes Roberts talk to her father, TD Jakes, and the lessons that you take from someone passing. But really, it's just the lessons about life. One, no one is exempt, right? That's just the easy lesson. No
Yeah.
one is exempt from this experience. But those deeper lessons of cherish the
Ooh,
people
yeah.
that are here,
Yeah.
your loved ones, anybody you love, make sure they know it.
Mm-hmm.
Bless them with your time,
So
right?
this is, I think, moving into the tips about how
Yeah,
to, like really
yeah. And I would,
even
okay,
prepare for
I would say lessons.
lessons. But I also
Because
think
tips, I think there's like, for me, I think about tips like how do you cope?
I like lessons. I like tips.
I got you.
Yeah.
I just look at, I think, okay, I think it's just
Yeah.
two things.
Yeah. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. I said lessons and tips.
yeah. But making sure that if you have love, you show love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was like one of the main takeaways for me. Like, and I'm not perfect. I'm still human. Some
Yeah.
days I'm like, y'all doing too much.
I think a lesson that I take from it, and this is something you kind of touched on, but while people are here, try to quiet the noise of how their interactions with others are versus how you perceive and feel and experience them. Because one thing that my sister and I had to
That's
grapple
good.
with was how we perceived our dad based on the idea of him from other people's experience with him. My dad is someone who, like I said, there are ways he could have showed up for us, but he also was just a beautiful spirit. And I don't think I know that I didn't appreciate some of the things I could do, like call him at the drop of a hat and say, Daddy, I need you to
I'm
pray for
struggling with
me.
this. Yep.
Daddy, I'm struggling with this. Can we talk about it in
Yep.
a biblical context? Because I don't get it. These are things that a lot of people don't have in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Like the connection that we had with him on an emotional level
Mm-hmm.
is something that I definitely took for granted.
Yeah. And I never felt judged by daddy.
Right.
Like, there are
Never.
people that don't have that experience where
Mm.
you can call, and let's just keep it real, where you can call your parent and say, look, this is what I'm dealing with. And you feel like I can have this raw, transparent conversation and
Yeah.
there won't be an ounce of judgment.
I
And
never had to.
I don't even think they mean it, but
Yeah.
you're going to walk into that conversation feeling like there's going to be a little bit of like,
Right.
a little bit with daddy. I never felt judged
Yeah.
whatsoever.
I had an epiphany the other day. I never had to go to my dad and like tailor a story so that he could,
Exactly.
like, I literally would be like, Daddy, this is
This
what
is
it
it.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me? And he'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, let's talk about it, let's break
Mm-hmm.
it down, but then let's pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was
Always
always
let's end it with let's
was
pray
prayer.
about it. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the beautiful thing when you can come to your parent and not have to like feel like you gotta like give him the bits and pieces so that he can
And warm them up.
right, so that they can digest it.
Yeah.
He just was like, no, let's talk about
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
So that's a lesson that
yeah.
I learned from him. Another lesson um is really like there are going to be, I think the overarching lesson is being kind to yourself and giving yourself grace through the process because for me, Amber said, like she said, you had a good talk with him before he passed. I was in a space where I was like so focused and laser focused on exams and law school. I even have messages of I'm
Mm-hmm.
calling, trying to reach you.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're busy. I know you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're striving for your goals.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a prayer to get you through the week. So a lot of our interactions in those last moments were him with messages for me, but
Mm-hmm.
not us speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to deal with that. Sorry.
Yeah, just say so.
I have to still deal with that. It still comes up of, you could have
It's the bargaining.
the bargaining,
Mm-hmm.
like you could have given yourself and him, those just minutes. It only took a couple minutes to say, hey, you know? And so I have to still deal with those thoughts, but knowing that I need to be kind to myself because life happens,
Mm-hmm.
And he
You
was
have to give yourself grace.
right. And he was so proud
of me striving to be an
Because
attorney, he knew what it took.
he would give you grace, and
Yeah,
he's giving you
yeah,
grace.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's just a human, like, whew,
Mm-hmm.
like you still have to figure out ways to be kind to yourself through those thoughts and that through
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah,
process,
there's always going to be thoughts of I could have, I
I
should
should
have,
have,
I
right,
would have,
right,
had I
yeah,
known,
right, right,
right?
right.
But then too, something I read was life wouldn't have meaning
Ooh, yeah,
without death,
right.
you
That's
know?
true. Yeah, that's true.
And so now you have that awareness of
What to
it only
do?
takes a second. When I say, girl, you are like now, like you are so good at calling people and
Mm-hmm.
checking in, and you'll call me, hey, I talked to Auntie so and so. When I talk to like, you are that person now that will call and check in on everyone just for a couple of minutes
Yeah.
to see how they're doing, to have a conversation.
Well, the lesson was hard, but I heard it,
It was
God.
a hard lesson, yeah, but you heard it,
Yeah, I heard it.
and now that you heard it, your children hear it.
Yeah.
So it is a hard lesson. Like
Mm-hmm.
again, it's the hard emotions that we learn from the most,
Ooh, yeah.
right? Because it's literally a turning and
Yeah.
it's transforming. Um, I would say, and I'm not gonna, like go down 100 lessons. I
Yeah.
would say the final lesson for me is forgiveness.
Mm.
And again, I'm human, so like I don't get it right all the time, but instead of leaning into what that person could have done, what they
Yeah.
should have
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
what did they do?
Right.
This person that I love that gave me life, number one,
Right. I'm here because.
what did they do for me?
Mm-hmm.
All of the other stuff I can let go.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, yes, it was important, but was it so deep that it held me back from, from my goals,
Right.
from life?
Clearly not.
But right,
We're here.
right. So I think that just forgiving your loved ones, like the ones you love, the ones that matter most to you, if you can, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes forgiveness could be I forgive you, but I have to, I have to
Right.
do it from a distance. With Daddy, that wasn't the case. But I'm just saying, like, just forgive people that you love,
Yeah. And
because when they're not here, you will wish that you had.
right. To the extent you can, because I
Hmm.
like you've mentioned, we had a father who showed up in ways that, we now understand were above and beyond in some respects.
Yeah.
But there are some people who go through life and, those individuals truly have hurt them
Oh
or,
yeah.
so to the
But
extent
but
that you
that's also from a
can, you
distance,
can,
right?
right.
From a distance,
And
and
sometimes
forgiveness is
understanding
sometimes
that,
letting go.
the forgiveness is for you, so
Right.
that like you yourself aren't harboring it,
Crippled by it.
manifesting it in
Yep.
physical ways, lessons aside, I think that some people could maybe glean from is one thing I think is really important when you lose someone close to you is understanding that they've transitioned, right? But there are also people who are tied to them who can help you to understand them in ways that maybe you couldn't. So for me, when my dad passed, I got really close, like close to my stepmom who, um, growing up, she was always present, but I didn't feel a closeness to her until a real closeness to her until my dad
Into the
passed.
void. Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for our relationship. Like I really do treasure her. And I know that my dad loved her so much that it was not even a question for me of, okay, I need to get to know this woman who my dad valued and treasured. I feel like he was kind of telling me,
Yeah.
I want you to get to know her on another level. And I'm thankful that she was receptive, to it.
Yeah. Which she would be.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But like as a
Um.
kid, you have all these like again, you have perceptions of people and like, I think life circumstances shapes things where you're like, I don't know if it'll be too much, but it was,
Mhm.
we both met each other with open arms, which is dope.
Mhm.
And then
Um.
my dad's siblings who are like, they were always,
They were always around.
yeah,
Yeah. And they
that was
stepped
like,
in. Yeah.
but they stepped in as like our, our other parents, and my aunt has always kind of shown up in that way. And I think it's because we lived in Connecticut. We were in close proximity to her, but our uncle, who was in Chicago,
Yeah,
and we only
the baby brother.
right, we would only see him like, you know, like every 5 years or so. You know,
Right.
it felt like but like when my dad passed, he stepped up in a way that I really truly appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially for our kids too. Like,
yeah.
you know, they loved him some
Papa Doug.
Papa Doug. Yeah.
I would say tips. Honestly, the biggest one for me, because everyone is different. Again, there's just so many circumstances that shape grief and when it happens and how it happens. Um, allow yourself to feel the moment as much as you can. I know I said that I had, I just had my daughter. But there were, like, when we got back home after the funeral, there were moments where I would just go to my husband and say, I just need you to take her, I need you to take her while I process that my dad is not here anymore. So feel it as much as you can, whatever the feeling is. And in feeling it, give yourself grace in the feelings that you do have, because there will be anger. There will be bargaining.
Right.
There will be
as
regret.
You can see.
There will be sadness or depression, whatever you want to call it. But allow yourself to feel it and give you grace and give yourself time and be patient with yourself. In addition to the feeling it, couple it with something that will also help you to cope with those feelings, right? So whether that's therapy, being in nature more, praying,
counseling,
meditating, going to church, like whatever that thing is that helps you to feel it and release it, would be the biggest tip I have for anybody. There's a lot of self-help books out there, a lot of literature around grief, but you don't know what grief is going to do to you until you experience it.
And I really would impart on you guys to think about, like, I don't like to press therapy on people, but I do think there's something to be said about speaking out. And, self-help books are great. Things that, are insightful are great.
But you have to move
if
that
you're
emotion.
not voicing it,
You have to move
and
it.
like really hearing it, letting it come out so that you can sit with it and hear it, I don't think
see it.
I don't think it's as helpful to you. Like, I really do think it takes voicing it, putting language to it so that you know what it means for you.
Because when you don't put language to it, it just stores itself in your body, right? And then you're not aware of that until later on. And so when you put a voice to it, you're putting vibration to it, which will cause it to again move within you, because it's going to move within you, but then move out of you.
Yep.
So I like what you said about, putting language to it, because you're making your body recognize that something is here that we have to deal with.
I have to work through.
Yeah.
I think, I appreciate this conversation with you, because, we talk about daddy often. I don't know that we always talk about the
like
the process of it all.
Yeah.
Like we talk about the in it. Like we're in it when we talk about it. But like the kind of the above the board, what it looks like to process it, I don't know that we've had that conversation. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Girl.
Right. We over here we on this camera crying, y'all. But thank y'all too. I think we're creating a space that we feel comfortable sharing these things. And I really
we know
appreciate
personally
that.
people that have gone through this.
Yeah.
Like there were people that came to my mind instantly as we were talking through this.
Friends, family.
Yeah. So thank y'all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone that's going through this right now, currently, like you have our prayers, you have our thoughts, our love, because it's not an easy process.
And if you want to reach out,
yeah, if you want to reach out,
if you don't feel comfortable,
yep. Definitely, I think we're both always here to talk about those types of feelings and processes and journeys. And maybe a girl can tap into an ancestor or something, but thank y'all.
Thank you guys. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And after this, our page will be coming up. But Instagram, it's
Motha_knows.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Instagram at Motha_knows. Sorry, my bad. and
YouTube and TikTok. Yeah,
Motha Knows Co.
But it'll come up on the screen.
Because my brain is screaming right now. That was a lot.
That was a lot. It's a little draining.
All right, bye, y'all.
Bye.